Welcome to the Voices of Real Life. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. In this emotional story, I reveal the shocking moment I discovered my wife was cheating and fucking another man. From the painful betrayal to the legal battles that ensued, join me as I navigate the heart-wrenching fallout of her deception. This is a journey of survival, resilience, and the strength to rebuild a life after betrayal. Don't miss this gripping tale of love, loss, and finding the courage to move forward. As I put the final touches on a complicated piece of code, the screen of my laptop flickered. I had wrapped up another successful project ahead of schedule. Leaning back in my comfy chair, I stretched my arms overhead, relishing the satisfaction of a job well done. "Jake, come here quick." Megan's voice rang out from downstairs, laced with excitement and urgency. It was enough to get me on my feet immediately. I dashed down the stairs of our home in Austin, taking them two at a time. "What's going on? Is everything all right?" I found her in our sun-soaked kitchen, practically buzzing with energy. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes sparkled with a vibrant intensity one had never seen before. "More than okay," she said, grabbing my hands. "Jake, I'm pregnant." For a brief moment, time stood still. Then, an explosion of joy erupted within me like fireworks. "Are you serious? We're having a baby?" Megan nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I just took the test." 2 lines, clear as day. Without hesitation, I swept her into my arms, spinning us both around the kitchen. Our laughter bounced off the granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. When I finally set her down, I held her face in my hands, taking in every detail of this precious moment. "I love you so much," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You've made me the happiest man alive." Megan's smile radiated pure joy. "We're going to be parents, Jake. Can you believe it? It's incredible." I replied, my mind racing ahead. "We'll need to baby-proof the house, start looking for cribs, maybe even consider a bigger place." She laughed, pressing a finger to my lips. "Slow down, Mr. Software Developer. We have plenty of time to plan. Right now, let's just soak in this moment." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "You're right, as always. How about we celebrate? I'll call Alex and see if he can get us a table at Uchi tonight. Sushi and champagne." Megan's eyes lit up. "Well, virgin cocktails for me now, I suppose." "Anything for the mother of my child," I replied, pulling out my phone. As I dialed Alex, our friend and the owner of Austin's trendiest restaurant, I couldn't stop grinning. Life was just perfect. My career was taking off, we had this beautiful home, and now a baby on the way. I glanced at Megan, who was absent-mindedly running her hand over her still flat stomach, and felt a surge of love and protectiveness. "Hey, Alex," I said when he picked up. "Is there any chance you can squeeze in your favorite power couple tonight? We've got some big news to celebrate." After securing our reservation, I turned back to Megan. "All set for 8 o'clock. Should we invite anyone else? Your sister, perhaps?" Megan shook her head. "Let's keep it just us tonight. We can tell everyone else tomorrow." I pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "Sounds perfect. I can't wait to shout it from the rooftops, though. Jake Thompson, soon-to-be dad." She giggled, but then her expression turned serious. "Jake, promise me something." "Anything," I said, meeting her gaze. "Promise me we'll always be this happy and that nothing will ever come between us." I gently kissed her forehead. "I promise, Meg. You and this baby are my whole world. Nothing could ever change that." As we stood there in our sunlit kitchen, wrapped in each other's arms, I truly believed those words. Little did I know how quickly that promise would be tested. 2 months sped by in a blur of doctor's appointments, late-night cravings, and endless baby name searches. I immersed myself in work, determined to secure a brighter future for our growing family. Our team was on the brink of a breakthrough with a new AI algorithm, and I found myself working later and later. One Tuesday evening, I decided to surprise Megan by coming home early. I stopped by her favorite flower shop and picked up a bouquet of sunflowers, her absolute favorite. Pulling into our driveway, I noticed the lights were on in the living room. Perfect, I thought. She's still awake. I let myself in quietly, planning to sneak up on her. But as I stepped into the foyer, I overheard Megan's voice from the living room. Something in her tone made me pause. I know," she was saying, her voice low and urgent. "But you have to understand, this changes everything." I froze, the flowers forgotten in my hand. Who was she talking to? Of course, I love you, Megan continued. My world tilted on its axis. I wouldn't tell you that it's your child if it wasn't true, but he's a better provider, and I need him right now. The blood roared in my ears. Your child, better provider. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening clarity. We'll keep seeing each other, I promise, Megan said. Just give me some time to figure this out. We have to be careful now. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed. Long enough to hear Megan end the call with a whispered, I love you too. Talk soon, somehow. I managed to slip out the front door without making a sound. Climbing into my car, I just drove, my mind a chaotic blend of shock, betrayal, and simmering anger. How could she do this? How long had this been happening? Before I knew it, I found myself parked at a scenic overlook, staring out at the shimmering lights of Austin below. The bouquet of sunflowers sat wilted and forgotten in the passenger seat. I pulled out my phone, my eyes landing on the lock screen. It was a picture of Megan and me from our last vacation, both of us beaming at the camera. My finger hovered over her contact info. I should confront her. Demand answers. But a cold, calculating part of my mind held me back. If I tipped my hand now, she might try to cover her tracks. No, I had to be smart about this. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. Think, Jake, what's your next move? The first thing I did was call my office and leave a message for my assistant. Sarah, something's come up. I need to take a personal day tomorrow. Please reschedule my meetings. Next, I scrolled through my contacts until I found Max Harper. We'd been friends since college, and he had gone into private investigation work. If anyone could help me figure this out, it was Max. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. Jake, this is a surprise. Everything okay, buddy? I cleared my throat, forcing my voice to remain steady. Hey, Max. No, everything is definitely not okay. I need your help, man. Discreetly. There was a pause on the other end. When Max spoke again, his tone was all business. What do you need? I need you to look into my wife, I said, the words tasting bitter as they left my mouth. I think she's having an affair, and the baby might not be mine. Jesus, Jake, Max said softly. I'm so sorry. Are you sure about this? I recounted what I had overheard, my grip tightening on the steering wheel as I relived the moment. Okay, Max said when I finished. I'll start digging first thing tomorrow. We'll get to the bottom of this, I promise. Thanks, Max, I replied. I appreciate it. After hanging up, I sat there for a long time, watching the city lights blur through the tears I finally allowed myself to shed. Eventually, I started the car and headed to a nearby hotel. There was no way I could go home and face Megan tonight without giving everything away. As I lay in the sterile hotel bed, sleep evaded me, and I replayed every moment of our relationship in my mind. Had there been signs I missed? How long had she been lying to me? One thing was for sure, the happy life I thought we had was nothing but an illusion. I was determined to come out on top when it all came crashing down. The harsh light of morning did nothing to soften the blow of reality. I woke up in the unfamiliar hotel room, my head pounding from a night of restless sleep and racing thoughts. For a fleeting, blissful moment, I hoped it had all just been a bad dream. But then the memories flooded back, and the pain hit me like a physical blow. I reached for my phone, half expecting a barrage of worried messages from Megan. Instead, there was only one text, working late tonight. Don't wake up. The casual life twisted the knife even deeper. Dragging myself out of bed, I stepped into the shower, letting the hot water wash over me as I tried to clear my mind. By the time I emerged, a plan was beginning to take shape. I dressed quickly in yesterday's clothes and headed out. My first stop was a coffee shop I knew Megan never visited. As I sipped a strong black coffee, I pulled out my laptop and started researching divorce laws in Texas. What I discovered gave me a sense of satisfaction. Texas was a fault-based divorce state, meaning infidelity could significantly influence the outcome of the proceedings. I was so engrossed in my research that I almost missed the call from Max. Jake, he said without preamble, I've got some preliminary information for you. Can you meet me at my office in an hour? I'll be there, I promised, already packing up my things. Max's office was located in a nondescript building downtown. As I rode the elevator up, I steeled myself for what I might learn. Max was waiting for me when the doors opened, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a look of concern. Come on in, he said, ushering me into his private office. Once the door was closed, he turned to face me. Jake, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It's bad. I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly feeling weak. How bad? Max sat across from me, sliding a folder across the desk. I put a rush on this, called in some favors. Megan has been seeing a man named Daniel Caldwell for at least 6 months. He's a local real estate mogul known for some ethically questionable business practices. I flipped open the folder, my stomach churning as I glanced at the photos inside. There was Megan and a tall, handsome man entering a high-end hotel, the two of them at a secluded restaurant holding hands across the table, and a zoomed-in shot of them kissing in a parked car. There's more, Max said gently. I did some digging into their financials. There have been some large transfers from Caldwell's accounts to Megan's personal account, an account you might not even know about. The implication hit me like a punch to the gut. She's been planning this, I said, my voice hollow. Using me for my money while setting up her escape with this Caldwell guy. Max nodded. It looks that way. I'm sorry, man. I know this isn't easy to hear. I closed the folder, unable to look at the evidence of my wife's betrayal any longer. What do I do now, Max? Well, that depends on what you want, he said. If you're considering divorce, and I wouldn't blame you if you were, you're in a strong position. Texas takes infidelity seriously in divorce proceedings. With this evidence, you could potentially walk away with the majority of the assets. I nodded slowly, my mind racing ahead. I need a lawyer. A good one. Max didn't hesitate. I know just the person, Olivia Morgan. She's a shark in the courtroom and specializes in high-profile divorce cases. Want me to give her a call? Please, I said. Then a thought struck me. Max, what about the baby? His expression softened. Given the timeline, there's a good chance it's not yours, Jake. I'm sorry, but we can request a paternity test as part of the proceedings. I buried my face in my hands, overwhelmed by the magnitude of Megan's betrayal. Everything I thought I knew about my life and my future had been a lie. When I looked up, a new resolve filled my voice. Set up the meeting with Olivia. I want to move fast on this. Megan thinks she can play me for a fool. She has no idea who she's dealing with. Max nodded, already reaching for his phone. I'll make it happen. And Jake, for what it's worth, I think you're making the right call. You deserve better than this. As I left Max's office, my mind was clearer than it had been since overhearing that damning phone call. The shock and pain were still there, but they were being channeled into something else, determination. Megan and her lover thought they had the upper hand, but they were about to learn a harsh lesson. I may have been blind to her deception before, but now my eyes were wide open, and I was going to ensure that when the dust settled, I came out on top. Let the games begin. I met Max at a quiet cafe downtown. He slid into the booth across from me. How you holding up, Jake? I shrugged, stirring my untouched coffee. Been better. What have you got for me? Max leaned forward, lowering his voice. I've been tailing Megan for the past week. Her routine is pretty consistent. She's met with a man at the Driscoll Hotel 3 times. I've got photos. He pulled out an envelope and passed it to me. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. That's him? I asked, staring at the image of Megan embracing a tall, well-dressed man. Max nodded. Daniel Caldwell, a real estate mogul with a reputation for cutting corners. I did some digging into his background. The guy's got skeletons in his closet, Jake. I flipped through more photos, each one like a knife to my heart. Tell me everything. Caldwell's got a history of shady deals. He's suspected of bribing city officials, but nothing's ever stuck. He's slippery. How long has this been going on? Max hesitated. Based on my investigation, at least 6 months, maybe longer. I slammed my fist on the table, causing nearby patrons to jump. 6 months. We've only known about the pregnancy for 2. Jake, I know this is hard, but you need to keep a clear head, Max said, his voice low and steady. We've got solid evidence of the affair. Now we need to dig deeper. I can get access to phone records, bank statements. We'll build an airtight case. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. You're right. What's our next move? I've got a contact who can clone Megan's phone. We'll be able to monitor her calls and texts in real time. It's not strictly legal, but... Do it, I interrupted. I don't care what it takes. I want to know everything. Max nodded, pulling out a small recording device. I also think we should wire your house to catch any conversations they might have there. Isn't that a violation of privacy laws? I asked. Technically, yes. But you're the homeowner, Jake. It's a gray area. Question is, how far are you willing to go? I thought about Megan's betrayal, the lies, the potential of raising another man's child. Whatever it takes, Max. I want them to pay for what they've done. Max looked at me for a long moment before nodding. All right, I'll set everything up. But Jake, promise me you won't confront Megan yet. We need to gather as much evidence as possible before tipping our hand. I promise, I said, my voice cold. I'll play the dutiful husband a little longer. Let them dig their own graves. As we left the cafe, Max placed a hand on my shoulder. We'll get through this, buddy. Just stay strong. I nodded, my mind already racing with plans for revenge. Megan and Daniel had no idea what was coming for them. A week later, I found myself in the sleek downtown office of Olivia Morgan, the divorce attorney Max had recommended. Her reputation preceded her, she was known as a shark in the courtroom, famous for her ruthless efficiency. Olivia studied the file of evidence that Max had compiled, her expression unreadable. Finally, she looked up at me. Well, Mr. Thompson, you've certainly been thorough, she said, her voice crisp. This is quite the case you've brought me. Leaning forward in my chair, I asked, can you help me? Olivia's lips curved into a predatory smile. Oh, I can do more than help. With this evidence, we can bury your wife and her lover. I'm listening, I replied, intrigued. Olivia stood up, pacing behind her desk. Texas is a fault-based divorce state. Infidelity can significantly impact the division of assets. With the evidence you've gathered, we can argue for a much larger share in your favor. And the child? I asked, my voice tight. Olivia's expression softened slightly. We'll request a paternity test, of course. But regardless of the results, we can use the affair to argue against any claims for child support if the child isn't yours. I nodded, a weight lifting off my shoulders. What's our first move? We file for divorce immediately, citing adultery, Olivia said, sitting back down. But we won't show our full hand yet. We'll start with just enough evidence to establish grounds for the divorce. Why not use everything we have? I asked. Olivia smiled again, reminding me of a shark circling its prey. Strategy, Mr. Thompson. We want to see how they respond. If they try to fight it, that's when we bring out the big guns. And if they don't fight, then we negotiate from a position of strength. Either way, you come out on top. I considered this for a moment. What about Megan's lover, Caldwell? Can we go after him too? Olivia's eyes gleamed. Now you're thinking like a shark, Mr. Thompson. We can't name him in the divorce proceedings, but we can certainly make his life difficult. Those shady business practices your investigator uncovered. I have some contacts who'd be very interested in that information. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Let's do it. I want to file as soon as possible. Olivia nodded, already reaching for her phone. I'll have the paperwork drawn up today. We can file first thing in the morning. But, Jake, she said, her tone suddenly serious, once we set this in motion, there's no going back. Are you absolutely sure this is what you want? I thought about the life I believed I had and the future that had been stolen from me. I'm sure, I said firmly. Megan made her choice. Now it's time for her to face the consequences. Olivia nodded, satisfaction evident in her eyes. Then let's get to work. By the time we're done, Megan won't know what hit her. As I left Olivia's office, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me mourned the life I was leaving behind, but a larger part, the part that had been betrayed and humiliated, was ready for war. Megan thought she could play me for a fool, but she was about to learn how wrong she was. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal maneuvers and clandestine meetings. I played the role of the oblivious husband perfectly, all while gathering more evidence and plotting my revenge. During a late-night strategy session with Max, the idea struck me. We need to expose them publicly, I said, pacing Max's living room. Not just in court, but to everyone they know. Max looked up from his laptop, eyebrows raised. That's pretty brutal, Jake. You sure about this? I nodded, my mind racing. Megan's birthday is coming up. We always throw her a big party. This year, it'll be one she never forgets. Over the next hour, I laid out my plan. Max listened, his expression a mix of admiration and concern. It's risky, he said when I finished. If it backfires, it could hurt our case. That's why we need to make it airtight, I replied. Can you get video evidence? Something undeniable. Max nodded slowly. I've got a guy who specializes in surveillance tech. We could set up hidden cameras in the hotel room they use. Do it, I said, whatever it costs. The day of the party arrived. I'd invited all our friends, family, and even some of Megan's clients. Daniel Caldwell was on the guest list, ostensibly as a business associate. As guests began to arrive, I plastered on a smile and played the role of the doting husband. Jake, this is amazing, Megan gushed, looking around at the beautifully decorated living room. You didn't have to go to all this trouble. I kissed her cheek, suppressing the urge to recoil. Anything for you, sweetheart. You deserve it. As the party hit full swing, I caught Max's eye across the room. He gave me a subtle nod. It was time. Everyone, could I have your attention, please? I called out, tapping a spoon against my champagne glass. The room quieted. As you all know, we're here to celebrate my beautiful wife's birthday, I said, raising my glass toward Megan. She beamed, completely unaware of what was coming. Megan, you've brought so much joy to my life, I continued, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside me. I thought I'd put together a little slideshow of our journey together. I dimmed the lights and started the projector. At first, it displayed innocent photos of our life together. Megan laughed at some of the earlier shots. But then the images changed. Suddenly, the screen filled with photos of Megan and Daniel together, entering hotel rooms, kissing in his car. The room went deathly silent. What? What is this? Megan stammered, her face paling. I turned to face her, my voice cold. This, Megan, is the truth. The truth about your affair with Daniel Caldwell. The truth about the child you're carrying. Gasps and murmurs filled the room as I saw Daniel trying to edge toward the door. Oh no, Daniel, I called out, my voice cutting through the stunned crowd. You don't get to slink away. You're as much a part of this story as she is. I turned back to Megan, who was shaking her head in denial. Jake, I can explain, she began. Save it, I cut her off. I've heard enough of your lies. I filed for divorce, Megan. It's over. The room erupted into chaos. Friends and family members shouted questions. Some rushed to comfort Megan, while others glared at her in disgust. Through it all, I stood firm, watching as the life Megan had built on lies crumbled around her. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't kind, but in that moment, it felt like justice. The silence that followed my announcement was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in our crowded living room. Then, all at once, the dam broke. How could you, Megan, her sister, Maria, cried out. We trusted you. Megan's face was ashen, her eyes darting frantically around the room. It's not, I didn't. Save your breath, I interrupted, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The evidence speaks for itself. Daniel, who had been edging toward the door, suddenly found his path blocked by Max, Mr. Caldwell. Max asked, his tone deceptively casual. Daniel straightened his jacket, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. This is a private matter. I think it's best if I leave. Oh, I don't think so, I said, turning to face him. You're as much a part of this as Megan. Why don't you tell everyone here about your plans for my company? Daniel's eyes widened in surprise. I don't know what you're talking about. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, let me refresh your memory. You and Megan weren't just planning to break up my marriage, you were plotting to take over my company, weren't you? Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Megan stumbled forward, reaching out to me. Jake, please, let me explain. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. Explain what, Megan? How you've been lying to me for months. How the child you're carrying might not even be mine. Tears streamed down Megan's face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did, I replied, my voice hard. And now you both have to face the consequences. One of Megan's clients, a well-known socialite, pushed her way to the front of the crowd. Megan, is this true? Have you been lying to all of us? Megan turned to her, desperation in her eyes. Charlotte, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. Charlotte shook her head in disgust. Save it. Consider our contract terminated. I can't believe I trusted you with my events. As word spread through the room, more of Megan's clients approached her, expressing their shock and disappointment. I watched as her carefully crafted world crumbled around her. Daniel, sensing the impending doom, made another attempt to leave. This time, it was my father who stopped him. "Not so fast, young man," Dad said, his voice filled with barely contained anger. "I think you owe my son an explanation." Daniel looked around frantically, realizing he was cornered. "This is all a misunderstanding," he stammered. "Megan and we never meant to hurt anyone." "Save it for the lawyers," I said coldly. "I'm sure they'll be very interested in hearing about your business practices, Daniel. The bribes, the insider trading, it's all coming out now." The color drained from Daniel's face. "You can't prove anything," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Want to bet?" I replied, nodding to Max. My friend pulled out his phone, playing a recorded conversation between Daniel and a city official discussing payoffs for building permits. The room erupted into chaos again. Friends and family shouted questions and accusations. Megan sank onto the couch, her head in her hands, while Daniel looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him. Through it all, I stood firm. Watching as the truth I had uncovered tore through the lies and deception, I felt a strange mix of emotions. It wasn't pretty, and part of me hated that it had come to this. But a larger part of me, the part that had been betrayed and humiliated, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. As the party disintegrated around us, guests leaving in shocked clusters and whispering among themselves, I caught Max's eye across the room. He gave me a subtle nod, a silent question, "You okay?" I nodded back, exhaling slowly. The trap had been sprung. The truth was out. Now it was time for the real battle to begin. The weeks following Megan's birthday party were a whirlwind of legal meetings and courtroom appearances. I sat across from Olivia in her office, reviewing our strategy for the upcoming hearing. Megan's lawyer filed a countersuit, Olivia said, sliding a document across her desk. "They're claiming emotional abuse." I scoffed, picking up the paper. "That's ridiculous. I never laid a hand on her." Olivia leaned forward, her expression serious. "Emotional abuse doesn't require physical violence, Jake. They're painting you as controlling and manipulative." "But that's not true." I protested. "I know," Olivia replied. "But we need to be prepared. How do you want to handle this?" I thought for a moment, then asked, "What are our options?" Olivia ticked off points on her fingers. "We can fight it head-on, presenting character witnesses to vouch for your behavior. Or we can redirect, focusing on Megan's infidelity and Daniel's shady business practices." "Let's redirect," I decided. "I don't want to give their claims any credibility." Olivia nodded approvingly. "Good choice. Now, about the paternity test." I tensed at her words. "What about it?" "The court has ordered one," Olivia explained. "We'll need to schedule it soon." I slumped in my chair, the reality of the situation hitting me anew. "And if it shows I'm not the father?" Olivia's voice softened slightly. "Then we use that to argue against any claims for child support." "But Jake, you need to be prepared for either outcome." I nodded, my throat tight. "I understand. Let's just get it over with." The day of the hearing arrived, and I found myself face to face with Megan for the first time since the party. She sat on the other side of the courtroom, flanked by her lawyer and Daniel. The sight of them together made my blood boil. Megan's lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, stood to address the judge. "Your Honor, my client has been the victim of a calculated campaign of emotional abuse and public humiliation." I gritted my teeth, but Olivia placed a calming hand on my arm. "Let him talk," she whispered. "We'll have our turn." When it was Olivia's turn to speak, she was a force of nature. "Your Honor, the defense's claims of abuse are a smokescreen, intended to distract from the real issues at hand. My client, Mr. Thompson, is the true victim here." She proceeded to lay out our case, presenting the evidence of Megan's affair and Daniel's unethical business practices. As she spoke, I watched Megan's face. She alternated between looking defiant and scared. The judge listened intently, occasionally asking questions. When both sides had presented their cases, he leaned back in his chair. "This is a complex situation," he said. "I'm ordering a paternity test for the unborn child. We'll reconvene when we have those results. In the meantime, I'm issuing a temporary order freezing all shared assets. Neither party is to dispose of or transfer any property or funds without the court's approval." As we left the courtroom, I caught Megan's eye. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I thought I'd married, but then her mask of indifference slipped back into place as she turned away. Outside, Olivia turned to me. "That went as well as we could have hoped. Now we wait for the paternity test." I nodded, feeling drained. "What do you think our chances are?" Olivia smiled confidently. With the evidence we have, I'd say they're very good. But Jake, remember, this is just the beginning. Stay strong. As I watched Megan and Daniel drive away, I steeled myself for the battles to come. This was far from over. The day of the paternity test arrived, bringing with it a storm of emotions I wasn't prepared for. I sat in the sterile waiting room of the medical center, my leg bouncing nervously. A nurse called my name, leading me to a small examination room. "Mr. Thompson, we're ready for you." As I rolled up my sleeve for the blood draw, the door opened and Megan walked in. Our eyes met, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Megan broke the silence. "Jake, I cut her off. Just don't." The nurse looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. "Mrs. Thompson, if you could take a seat. We'll need a sample from you as well." Megan sat in the chair next to me, her hand unconsciously moving to her slightly swollen belly. The sight made my heart clench. "How are you feeling?" I asked, despite myself. Megan looked surprised at the question. "I'm okay. Morning sickness is finally easing up," Megan said. I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. We sat in awkward silence as the nurse took our samples. "The results should be ready in a few days," the nurse informed us. "The court will be notified directly." As we left the room, Megan turned to me. "Jake, can we talk? Please." I hesitated, torn between my anger and the remnants of the love I once felt for her. "I don't think that's a good idea, Megan. I know I hurt you," she pressed on. "But there's so much you don't understand." I laughed bitterly. "What's to understand? You cheated on me, lied to me, and tried to take my company. Seems pretty clear to me." Tears welled up in Megan's eyes. "It wasn't supposed to be like this, Jake. Daniel promised me things. He said he could make all our dreams come true. And that justified betraying me?" I asked, my voice hard. Megan looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "No, nothing justifies what I did. I'm sorry, Jake. More than you'll ever know." For a moment, I almost softened. Then I remembered the overheard phone call, the photos of her with Daniel, the look on her face when she was exposed at the party. "Save your apologies," I said coldly. "We'll let the courts decide what happens next." I turned and walked away, leaving Megan standing alone in the hallway. As I drove home, my emotions warred within me. Part of me wanted to believe Megan's remorse was genuine, but a larger part, the part that had been betrayed and humiliated, refused to let my guard down again. The next few days were some of the longest of my life. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the waiting. Finally, Olivia called. "Jake, the results are in. Can you come to my office?" My heart raced as I drove to Olivia's office. This was it, the moment of truth. Olivia was waiting for me, a manila envelope on her desk. "Are you ready?" she asked gently. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Olivia opened the envelope and scanned the contents. Her expression gave nothing away. "Jake," she said, looking up at me, "the test shows that you are not the biological father of Megan's child." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I'd suspected it and the timeline made it likely, hearing it confirmed was devastating. "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly. "I know this isn't the news you were hoping for." I took a shaky breath, trying to process the information. "What happens now?" Olivia's professional demeanor returned. "Now we use this in our favor. With proof of Megan's infidelity and the fact that the child isn't yours, we have a strong case for a favorable division of assets. And we can fight any attempt she might make for spousal support." I nodded, feeling numb. "Do whatever you think is best, Olivia. I trust you." As I left Olivia's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Megan. "I heard about the results. Can we please talk?" I stared at the message for a long moment before deleting it without replying. There was nothing left to say. In the days following the paternity test results, I threw myself into gathering every piece of damning information I could find on Daniel Caldwell. Max's investigation had uncovered a treasure trove of dirt, and I was determined to use it. I met with Sarah, a journalist friend from college, at a quiet coffee shop downtown. "Thanks for meeting me," I said as she slid into the booth across from me. Sarah smiled, her reporter's instincts clearly piqued. "Of course, your message sounded intriguing. What's this big story you've got for me?" I pushed a flash drive across the table. "Everything you need to know about Daniel Caldwell's illicit business practices. Bribery, insider trading, you name it." Sarah's eyes widened as she plugged the drive into her laptop and scanned the files. Jake, this is explosive. Where did you get all this? I have my sources, I said vaguely. The question is, can you use it? Sarah nodded slowly, still scrolling through the documents. Oh, I can use it, all right. This is Pulitzer material. But, Jake, she looked up at me, her expression serious, are you sure about this? Once this goes public, there's no going back. I met her gaze steadily. I'm sure. It's time the truth came out. Sarah nodded, unplugging the drive and slipping it into her bag. All right, give me a few days to verify everything and put the story together. This is going to make waves. That's what I'm counting on, I replied. True to her word, Sarah's expose hit the front page of the Austin American-Statesman 3 days later. The effect was immediate and devastating. Daniel's company's stock plummeted, and within hours, there were calls for a formal investigation. I was in Olivia's office when the news broke. She looked up from her computer, a mix of admiration and concern on her face. Jake, did you have anything to do with this? I shrugged, trying to look innocent. I may have passed along some information to a journalist friend. Olivia shook her head, but I could see she was impressed. Well, it's certainly going to help our case. Megan is going to have a hard time claiming Daniel can provide for her and the baby now, I thought, when my phone buzzed with a call from her. Against my better judgment, I answered. How could you? Megan's voice was a mix of anger and desperation. Do you have any idea what you've done? I exposed the truth, I replied calmly. Something you should have done a long time ago. Daniel's ruined, Megan said. The police are investigating him. What am I supposed to do now? For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. That's not my problem anymore, Megan. You made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences. Jake, please, her voice broke. I know I hurt you, but I need your help. For the baby's sake, if nothing else. I closed my eyes, steeling myself against the pull of her plea. I'm sorry, Megan, but you're on your own now. I hung up, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sadness. It was over. I had won. But the victory felt hollow somehow. Olivia watched me with understanding eyes. You did what you had to do, Jake. Don't second-guess yourself now. I nodded, pushing away the conflicting emotions. You're right. What's our next move? Olivia smiled, all business once again. Now we press our advantage. With Daniel out of the picture, Megan has no leg to stand on. We'll push for a quick settlement, get you everything you're entitled to and more. As I left Olivia's office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could see a future beyond this mess. In the aftermath of Daniel's downfall and the ongoing divorce proceedings, I found myself feeling increasingly isolated. My friends and family were supportive, but they couldn't truly understand what I was going through. That's when I received an unexpected message on LinkedIn. Hey, stranger. Long time no see. Heard you've been going through a rough patch. Wanna grab coffee and catch up? Veronica. Veronica Hayes. We had been close in college but had drifted apart after graduation. I hesitated for a moment, then typed out a reply. Hey, Veronica, coffee sounds great. How about tomorrow at Houndstooth on North Lamar? The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop early, my nerves jangling. When Veronica walked in, I was struck by how little she'd changed. Same warm smile, same confident stride. Jake Bradford, she said, pulling me into a hug. It's been way too long. We settled into a corner table with our drinks, and Veronica fixed me with a sympathetic look. So, want to tell me what's been going on? I saw some of it in the news, she prompted, and I took a deep breath and started talking. To my surprise, once I started, I couldn't stop. I told her everything about Megan's betrayal, the divorce, the paternity test, all of it. Veronica listened without interrupting, her expression a mix of shock and compassion. When I finally finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Jake, I'm so sorry. What you've been through, it's unimaginable. I shrugged, trying to downplay the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. I'm dealing with it, one day at a time, you know. Veronica nodded. Well, you don't have to deal with it alone anymore. I'm here if you need anything, even if it's just someone to vent to. For the first time in months, I felt a genuine smile tugging at my lips. Thanks, Veronica. That means a lot. We spent the next few hours catching up. Veronica told me about her successful tech startup, and I found myself genuinely interested in something outside my own problems for the first time in ages. As we were leaving, Veronica turned to me. Hey. My company's hosting a charity gala next week. Why don't you come? It might do you good to get out, meet some new people. I hesitated. I don't know, Veronica. I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of thing. She bumped my shoulder playfully. Come on, it'll be fun. And if it's not, we can always sneak out early and go get burgers or something. Her enthusiasm was infectious. All right, you've convinced me. I'll be there. The night of the gala, I found myself actually looking forward to it. Veronica met me at the entrance, stunning in a sleek black dress. You clean up nice, Bradford, she said with a wink as we mingled with the other guests. I was surprised to find myself enjoying the conversation. Veronica introduced me to several of her colleagues, and I found myself engaged in discussions about emerging tech trends and market predictions. Later, as we stood on the balcony taking a breather, Veronica turned to me. So, was this as terrible as you thought it would be? I laughed, realizing it was the first time I'd done so in weeks. No, it wasn't terrible at all. Thanks for dragging me out, Veronica. I needed this. She smiled, her eyes twinkling in the moonlight. Anytime, Jake. That's what friends are for. As I looked at her, I felt something stir inside me, a warmth I thought I'd never feel again. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was possibility. And for now, that was enough. Just when I thought things were finally settling down, life threw another curveball my way. I was at the office late one night, catching up on work I had neglected during the divorce proceedings when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Cautiously, I answered. Hello. A gruff voice responded, Is this Jake Bradford? Yes, who's this? Someone who thinks you should know the truth about your wife and Daniel Caldwell. My heart raced. What are you talking about? Check your email. I've sent you some files. Be careful who you trust, Mr. Bradford. This goes deeper than you know. The line went dead. My hands were shaking as I opened my email on my computer. At the top of my inbox was a message from an anonymous address. I clicked it, my breath catching as I scanned the contents. Spreadsheets, emails, meeting minutes, all pointing to one shocking conclusion. Megan and Daniel had been plotting to take over my company for months. I called Max immediately. I need you to verify some information for me, I said, forwarding him the files. And I need it done quietly. Max whistled low as he looked over the documents. This is big, Jake. That's what I need you to find out, I replied. How quickly can you do it? Give me 48 hours, Max said. I'll call you as soon as I know anything. The next 2 days were agonizing. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the bombshell that had been dropped in my lap. Finally, Max called. It's all true, Jake, he said without preamble. I've triple-checked everything. Megan and Daniel were planning a hostile takeover of your company. They were going to use the shares Megan would get in the divorce as a foothold. I sank into my chair, stunned. I can't believe it. I mean, I knew she betrayed me, but this, what are you going to do? Max asked. I thought for a moment, then said, I'm going to end this once and for all. I called Olivia, filling her in on what I had discovered. She was silent for a long moment after I finished. Jake, this changes everything, she finally said. With this evidence, we can not only ensure you keep your company intact, but we can potentially press charges for corporate espionage. Do it, I said firmly. No more playing nice. The next morning, I walked into the courtroom for our final hearing with a renewed sense of purpose. Megan and her lawyer were already there, looking smug. They clearly thought they still had the upper hand. As the judge entered, Olivia stood. Your Honor, before we proceed, new evidence has come to light that drastically changes the nature of this case. Megan's lawyer jumped to his feet. Objection. Any new evidence should have been disclosed prior to this hearing. The judge looked at Olivia sternly. Ms. Morgan, explain yourself. Olivia nodded respectfully. Your Honor, this evidence only came to light 48 hours ago. We've been working diligently to verify its authenticity before presenting it to the court. She proceeded to lay out the evidence of Megan and Daniel's plot. As she spoke, I watched Megan's face. The color drained from her cheeks, and she whispered frantically to her lawyer. When Olivia finished, the courtroom was silent. The judge looked at Megan and her lawyer. Do you have any response to these allegations? Megan's lawyer stammered, clearly blindsided. Your Honor, we need time to review this new information. The judge nodded gravely. Given the serious nature of these allegations, I'm inclined to agree. We'll recess for 1 hour. I suggest you use that time wisely, counselor. As we filed out of the courtroom, Megan caught my arm. Jake, wait. Please, let me explain. I turned to face her, my voice cold. Explain what, Megan? How you were planning to steal my company along with my dignity. Tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Daniel said, he promised. Save it, I cut her off. I'm done listening to your lies. An hour later, we were back in the courtroom. Megan's lawyer looked defeated as he addressed the judge. Your Honor, in light of this new evidence, my client wishes to withdraw her claims and agree to Mr. Bradford's original terms for the divorce settlement. The judge nodded, then turned to me. Mr. Bradford, do you wish to press charges regarding the attempted corporate takeover? I glanced at Megan, seeing the fear in her eyes. For a moment, I was tempted, but then I thought of all the energy I'd already expended on revenge. No, Your Honor, I said finally. I just want this to be over. The judge nodded approvingly. Very well. Given the circumstances, I'm granting the divorce on the grounds of adultery. Mr. Bradford will retain full ownership of his company and all associated assets. Mrs. Bradford waives any right to spousal support. As the gavel fell, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. Really, truly over. Outside the courthouse, Veronica was waiting for me. She'd become a constant source of support over the past few weeks. How did it go? She asked, concern etched on her face. I managed a small smile. It's done. I won. If you can call any of this winning. Veronica squeezed my hand. Hey, you survived. That's what matters. So what now? I took a deep breath, looking out at the Austin skyline. Now I start rebuilding. My company. My life. Everything. Veronica smiled, linking her arm through mine. Well, you don't have to do it alone. I'm here every step of the way. As we walked away from the courthouse, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, I was looking forward to the journey. Megan and Daniel's betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but in the end, it had made me stronger. I had survived, and I had triumphed. And now, with new allies by my side, I was ready to face whatever came next. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear, the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was living well. And that's exactly what I intended to do. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe to the channel to watch my next videos and share with me your opinion, what you would do in my place.